Hare Krishna. So we are continuing our discussion on chapter number 17. Yesterday we came to the conclusion of Bhagavad-gita. We started going back. Chapter number 17 is titled Divisions of Faith. Essentially divisions of faith because it's based upon three divisions of faith, which is based upon the three gunas. And we noticed that how based upon the guna, which is predominant in our personality, our heart is influenced, and the heart, based upon the influence of the gunas, creates a certain kind of faith, and that faith or shraddha directs to a particular kind of worship. So different people, they worship different personalities, different forms, and the question arises in the matter of preaching, why are there so many different kinds of worships? Why didn't God just create one kind of worship? It would have been so much simpler for everyone. I feel inspired by this devata, I feel inspired by that devata, I actually feel inspired by this person. No, I feel inspired by the unknown, the ethereal, the spirits and the ghosts. Everybody has many different ideas, and when you try to talk to them and say that, why don't you worship Krishna? Krishna. Why don't you worship Krishna? And they say, I don't feel like it. Right? My faith and my nishtha or I'm inspired to worship this personality. And after, in the matter of preaching, then you wonder, why doesn't this person feel? I've been trying so hard. Why doesn't he feel like worshipping Krishna? So the answer is given in Bhagavad-gita. They're based upon the modes. And yesterday we read in the 17th chapter, which we're concluding now in just 7 minutes, that not only is one's worship influenced by modes in the form of tamogun, rajagun and sattvagun. Those are the three modes, which in English are known as ignorance, passion and goodness. But also what we eat, what sacrifice we perform, what austerity we perform, if we do any, like we discovered in our lives, there is no sacrifice, there is no austerity, and there is no charity also, except for some old clothes or broken mobile phone, etc., which we give away. But if at a time amongst people where it was being done, there's also a categorization of that. So that was the path. That is what it is. Now, okay, so there are people in different stages of consciousness. Are they supposed to just remain stuck there? Is this a philosophy where for infinitum you are what you are and there is no scope for you? Burn in hell forever. Damned forever? No. The whole Vedic process expects that if you were to perform your sacrifice, austerity and charity as per your gunas, if you do it right, under the direction of the scriptures, you will move from lower modes, which is tamogun, to rajagun, to sattvagun. And in that, at the time when this sacrifice, penance, austerity, as well as charity was being performed, there was a special mantra that was being chanted. And that is what Krishna says. He says, if one was to chant this mantra, then that mantra, Hare Krishna, that mantra would allow this progression to happen. And that is what shall be described in the verse that I'll request Mataji to chant. Verse number 23. From the beginning of creation, the three words Om, Tat, Sat. Please say with me, Om, Tat, Sat were used to indicate the supreme absolute truth. So these three words indicate the supreme absolute truth. These three symbolic representations were used by Brahmanas while chanting the hymns of the Vedas and during sacrifices for the satisfaction of the Supreme. If you remember the last few verses, when the last category came in, I think it was charity, and they said charity done without the chanting, at the wrong place, wrong time, without the chanting of Vedic hymns, without giving prasadam is not. So when the Vedic hymns are being chanted, these were code, these are encrypted sound vibrations, if I may use the analogy. These are encrypted sound vibrations which are decrypted in Bhagavad-gita. Om Tat Sat is the encrypted word. The decryption is given in verse number 24, 25, 26, 27. Those who are qualified could not only decrypt it theoretically, but at the moment they would chant the word Om, the moment they would chant the word Tat, and the moment they would chant the word Sat, if they were at a particular consciousness, it would invoke the effect, which is described in verse number 24. So the Om Tat Sat, when chanted along with these activities of sacrifice, penance and charity, would help the eternally damned people to gradually rise up in the sequence. And that is the formula. Right? So you go through all of this, but then you chant Om Tat Sat, and by which you go up. Hare Krishna. Swagatam. So, verse number 24 says, therefore, transcendentalists undertaking performances of sacrifice, charity and penance. You see, all three last categories on the modes are described. In accordance with scriptural regulations, begin always with Om to attain the Supreme. Om, the simple way to look at it is, Om is chanted at the beginning. Tat maintains the consciousness during the process. And Sat is the result of performance. Right? So when you're doing something, and if you want to do it right, you should know why you're doing it, which is what Om creates. Tat maintains that consciousness, and Sat gives the result of the yajna, or the sacrifice, the penance, the austerity, the charity, the dana. So, verse number 25 now says about Tat. Without desiring fruitive results, one should perform various kinds of sacrifices, penance and charity with the word Tat. The purpose of such transcendental activities is to get free from material entanglement. If you notice the words, without desiring fruitive results. If somebody is not desiring fruitive results, then automatically he is at least in the mode of goodness. Because it is in our formula, it is the fruitive results which immediately puts you in at least passion. So, if the person is already in goodness, and then if he chants Tat, what else does he get? The purpose of such transcendental activities is to get free from material entanglement. He is promised that he will rise up from goodness into Shuddha Sattva or pure goodness. Clear? Tat. Then the last phrase, Sat. Verse number 26 and 27, translations. The absolute truth is the objective of devotional service. Objective is the goal. It means the goal, the prayojana. And it is indicated by the word Sat. The performer of such sacrifice is also called Sat, as are all works of sacrifice, penance and charity, which true to the absolute nature are performed to please the Supreme Person of Son of Pritha, or Son of Pritha. So, we can see that how Krishna, even in this encrypted messages that he is giving, still he is brought through the progression of the modes, he has brought the person to the stage of starting to practice devotional service to the Supreme Lord. You may be influenced by various modes, but you can, by chanting Om Tat Sat, you can come to that level. So, is this what we are aspiring for? This is part of the indirect process, the long process. If you remember my analogy, few days back I said there is the staircase and there is the elevator. This is the staircase process. You're in, let's say I'm in Tamoguna and I want to rise up, so I follow the Vedic process for life after life after life, many, many lifetimes, and gradually I raise my consciousness, and eventually I shall reach the stage of also transcendental. So that is not what Krishna is going to recommend. Krishna's recommendation is that it is better to just directly take up devotional service and try it. So after hearing about Sat, it is also natural that one would like to know what if this is not performed with the accompaniment of Om Tat Sat. So the next verse naturally addresses that point and it brings it to a closure, the whole chapter. Anything done as sacrifice, charity or penance without faith in the Supreme, O son of Pritha, is impermanent. It is called Asat and is useless both in this life and the next. Very strong statement, right? So Krishna sort of encourages Arjuna to perform sacrifice, charity, penance, activities, and if he does it properly, what is the result is described. If you do it in different modes, that was described in the whole chapter. If you do it properly for the Supreme, then what is the result is described. And if you don't do it, then what happens is described. And because Krishna has emphasized so much on doing your sacrifice, charity and penance, which involves your austerity, involves your body, words and mind. So Arjuna naturally then in the next chapter he asks, shouldn't I just sort of think about renouncing and tyaga? How does this all fit? So that's how we then ventured into chapter 18. So let's conclude the discussion on chapter 17. So the gradual process of elevation should be avoided and Krishna consciousness should be taken up directly. There is no need to elevate ourselves gradually through the banyan tree. Okay? So today, by the time we finish our session, we will go back to the banyan tree. So my hope is that we will cover 16, which is a short chapter, and we'll also at least touch upon and hopefully also finish Purushottam Yoga chapter, which talks about the banyan tree. So when the whole discussion started, starting from 13th chapter, 14th chapter talks about gunas, 15th chapter gives the allegory of the banyan tree, the inverted banyan tree, how based upon the different gunas where you're based. 14th chapter was all gunas, then based upon the gunas where you're based on the inverted banyan tree, and then 16th and 17th gives you an idea of how to go up on the banyan tree. Whereas Krishna's message at the end of each of these 16th and 17th chapter, better always follow the instructions of scriptures if you want to go up. Do it under the spiritual master, better to take directly. That's Krishna's message. So even if because of our nature we naturally have faith in one thing or another, we should hear transcendental literature from pure souls and then progress in devotional service. Let's read something from Srila Prabhupada's purport on chapter number 17, which is the last verse purport. Anything done without the transcendental objective, whether it be sacrifice, charity or penance, is useless. As per the translation, Prabhupada also does the same. He writes exactly that. Then he says, therefore in this verse it is declared that such activities are abominable. Everything should be done for the Supreme in Krishna consciousness. Without such faith and without the proper guidance, there can never be any fruit. In all the Vedic scripture, faith in the Supreme is advised. In the pursuit of all Vedic instruction, the ultimate goal is the understanding of Krishna. Vedanta Krit, Vedavit, Eva Cha Aham. That's also mentioned in different parts of Bhagavad-gita, but Prabhupada writes, no one can obtain success without following this principle. Therefore, the best course is to work from the very beginning in Krishna consciousness under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. That is the way to make everything successful. Now please keep in perspective, here Prabhupada is saying that sacrifice which we don't perform, charity which we don't perform, and austerity which we don't perform if it's performed according to Vedic scripture, if Krishna is not there, it's useless. So how useless is our activities which we currently perform? Some food for thought. Right? Because when I'm reading the purport, you may know, this if it's not, then it's useless. But we should not forget that what activities we are currently performing. If these don't bear fruit, how permanent is the fruit that we receive? I continue the purport after that food for thought. The mode of goodness is better than the mode of passion and ignorance, but one who takes directly to Krishna consciousness is transcendental to all three modes of material nature. Although there is a process of gradual elevation, if one, by the association of pure devotees, takes directly to Krishna consciousness, that is the best way. And that is recommended in this chapter. To achieve success in this way, one must first find the proper spiritual master and receive training under his direction. Now this is a key point, very, very important point, that the role of a guru in one's life is an active role. Please remember this. It's not a passive role. It's a very, very active role. When we are receiving Diksha or when we are accepting a spiritual master, we should be ready and we should find circumstances where we can get active guidance from the spiritual, either the Diksha Guru or the Siksha Gurus. Unless otherwise we engage like that every day, every single day, where we are not making progress under the direction of someone, what do you think is happening on that day? That day of our life finishes, never comes back, and that day has not been useful. So when Prabhupada writes, to achieve success in this way, one must first find the proper spiritual master and receive training under his direction. Regularly, you have to be with the spiritual master, you have to serve the spiritual master, you have to take instructions, you have to do menial service. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya updekshanti te jnanam jnanina tattvadarshana. Very, very fundamental verse right in the beginning of Bhagavad-gita. Very important for us to remember this. So then one can achieve faith in the Supreme. So if we follow that process, which is spiritual master, and then we get trained and work under his guidance, then we get faith in the Supreme. So if any one of us we are all wondering, how come I don't have that strong faith? Why have I not reached that stage where I say, I'm done with this. I'm not going to waste a single moment or a single day. Answer is given here. We are not following the process. The process is saying you really have to dedicate your life and use a lot of your time and energy in doing this, and then the faith will, to the extent we do it, that extent the faith will become stronger and stronger and stronger in the Supreme. When that faith is mature in course of time, Prabhupada says, it is called love of God. This love is the ultimate goal of the living entities. You see, every morning we chant, right? To achieve our desired success, Krishna Prema. We say it, we want Krishna Prema. But here it is described how to get that Krishna Prema. And if we don't have Krishna Prema, then all the other symptoms arise. We just don't have much interest, difficulty, we don't want to read so much, we're mostly dragging our feet, and it's one thing feeds into another, the other thing feeds back into, it's a feedback loop. If we don't do this, we don't move forward. We don't move forward. One should therefore take to Krishna consciousness directly. This is taking to Krishna consciousness directly. That is the message of the 17th chapter. So 17th chapter was divisions of faith. Now, we all came to 17th chapter of divisions of faith from the 16th chapter, which was titled the Divine and Demoniac Nature. Now the Divine and Demoniac Nature chapter, division of the faith goes into finer details. Worship, sacrifice, charity, penance, food, etc. Okay? 16th chapter, it's titled in such a way that it does a broad categorization of the various people who are on. It's an allegory. It's not that all of us are right now hanging down from a banyan tree. Some of us are, but maybe we are not. We don't see any banyan tree. It's an allegory. Allegory means it helps us visualize our situation. So, that allegory we will cover in chapter 15, where the whole banyan tree is described, why you should get out there, etc. And those who are hanging around in the banyan tree in the three categories, the broad classification is introduced in 15th chapter, and then Krishna further elaborates on it in 16th chapter. So 16th chapter divides everybody into two categories, the divine and the demoniac. And if there is one message that you want to remember as the key message of 16th chapter, who's divine, who's demoniac, that question we addressed many times, including in the 17th chapter yesterday and 18th chapter this topic came up. Very simple. Those who follow scriptures, those who follow Shastra under the order of a spiritual master are divine. And the reverse is true. Those who do not follow anyone, and especially the Vedic scriptures. So, if we are not following anyone, we are clearly in the demoniac. If we are following someone, then based upon who we are following, we are still in demoniac. It's only when you follow scriptures under the order of a spiritual master, then you start falling in the category of divine. So that is the core message of divine and demoniac. And that core message shall unfold in the 16th chapter. The 16th chapter begins by first introducing those who are of divine qualities. Now, when we hear the word divine, sometimes we start feeling we have wings like fairies, and we're going to start flying, and we'll have a halo around our head, and there'll be a bright light behind us. Whoever will look at us, they will see, oh, there's some strong effulgence. That's not the kind of divine that's being described here. That's the divine we see in movies. Here it's very plain and basic. Very plain and basic. This is not what you show outside. This is what you are inside. If you are divine from inside, everything else, you may start, some of us, some of you may get halo, we all may get halos also, if Krishna so desires. But at least, first it starts from the inside. So it's all internally focused. So Krishna focuses, first he starts defining the divine. Now, this topic of those who are with good qualities divine are those who are following scriptures, because it's following scripture which develops these nice qualities and make us divine. So, these divine qualities he'll touch upon only for the first 3 verses. And he gives enough for us to meditate for a whole lifetime. For a whole lifetime there's enough for us to meditate with these divine qualities. The rest of the chapter, Krishna will himself say, I have described these divine qualities in many parts in Bhagavad-gita. Chapter 12 I have described, and in chapter 9 I have described. Throughout the Bhagavad-gita I have said, in chapter 5 I have described Pandita, then in chapter 2 I have described Sthita Pragya. He says, I have described these divine qualities many times, and even here, so I shall focus my energy now to help you understand what is demoniac, what is asuric, what is bad, so that in your pursuit for becoming good, you protect yourself and elevate yourself from that which is bad. So, the first 3 verses, I'll request Amalarjuna Prabhu, if you can kindly read the translation. In this chapter also we went through all the Sanskrit verses, verse by verse, in our last Friday afternoon program, right?
Yeah.
We went through that Friday afternoon at Sangeeta Hall. So we'll just do the English, Prabhu, please.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity, simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from envy and from the passion of honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharata, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature.
Now that you have the advantage of having gone through complete Bhagavad-gita, especially chapter number 17 and the beginning of chapter number 18 also, from your understanding now, look at the words that appear and reflect on them and tell me which of the gunas is this indicative of. On the banyan tree there are 3 gunas. So everybody please reflect. The words are similar to what appeared in 17, similar to what appeared in 18, when there was a categorization. Right? What do you think they are now reflective of? Which guna? Sattva guna, right? So those who are in Sattva guna, in this distinction of divine and demoniac, those who are in Sattva guna are on the higher levels of the banyan tree. Right? That's how simple it is. Those are the ones that are being talked about. Having said that, Prabhupada explains that one who practices bhakti properly under the order of a spiritual master, according to scriptures, automatically also develops all of these qualities. Even if you take the process directly, these qualities develop. So, Isho, our nectar of instruction, the first verse also describes this. Vacho vegam, manasa krodha vegam, jiva vegam, udarapastha vegam, etan vegam, suvishayati dhira, sarvam apimam prithvim sishishayat. Right? Now, dhira, self-controlled, all of those qualities are also manifesting by the potency of bhakti. So, Krishna here has listed 26 qualities of divine nature. And if these qualities are developed by practice by all class of men and women, then gradually it is possible to rise to the highest platform, transcendental realization. A basic concept is that if we are not in mode of goodness at least, in order to properly practice bhakti, you should at least, our overall good modes should have been at least at goodness and above. Right? You cannot sustain if we keep ourselves engaged in lower mode activities of ignorance and passion, then our bhakti will not progress also, because Krishna will not see the sincerity and the genuineness. He will say the person is trying to cheat. So it is, Prabhupada has said often that the best platform to elevate or start bhakti is goodness, sattva guna, at least maintain oneself in that stage. Right. Now, Krishna very clearly now, very quickly, Hare Krishna Prabhu, welcome. So Krishna now very quickly, he will spend time, he will first now, after giving the 26 qualities, he'll straight away start talking about the demoniac qualities also. Right? Now, as much attention as we did not pay to the good qualities, we should pay more than that to the bad qualities. I remember Deepak Prabhu had mentioned to me on that day, he said, every night I am now going to go through this list of the 26 qualities and verify whether I am, what I did today was around, right?
Self-assessment.
Self-assessment criteria, right? Yesterday night, after reading the chapter on the 17th chapter, where the food in the mode of passion was described, I was sitting with him and having namkeen from Indore. Right? And definitely it didn't look like, unless when he went to his room and he went to the 26 qualities, definitely that food did not arise in us the thought of going through the 26 qualities. So live example is there. How if we keep touch with lower modes, the food we eat, the activities we perform, then the higher qualities it is difficult. But it's a good habit if we can do self-assessment. So I would say in the self-assessment we should also do the reverse, which Krishna will talk about. It's a very, very nice words, so practical, so straightforward. Krishna, he's not saying something outside there. He's talking about inside here. He's talking about text number 4. He says, pride, arrogance, conceit, anger, harshness. Not just anger as in, loud anger and you're flinging knives and stabbing somebody. He says harshness and ignorance. These qualities belong to those of Hare Krishna Mataji. Swagatam, please come. These qualities belong to those of demoniac nature, O son of Pritha. O son of Pritha. If somebody can give space for Mataji to pass through so that she can come and comfortably sit here if she wants to. So, please hear, harshness, anger, conceit, ignorance, arrogance, pride, all of these Krishna defines as qualities of those who are in demoniac nature or asurik bhava, or son of Pritha. So it's not that we will sometimes feel, I don't have pride, I'm okay. All this checklist has to go through. So, I will read Srila Prabhupada's purport which I read the other day because it is so wonderful. It is a very nice reminder, especially for those who are engaging in preaching, I was telling the other day. The moment you start picking up Bhagavad-gita, start telling people about Krishna and, people start offering respects to you, it gets to the head. Nothing is better than people in this world. Imagine, what it can do to your head if people start coming and offering you respect. They start thinking, you are learned, you're worshipable. So Prabhupada explains, he gives warning. And when we have a Pracharak Sangha meeting tomorrow, I'm going to talk about this topic. It's very important. In this verse, I'm going to read verbatim, I'm not going to stop, I'm only going to pause for effect. And pause so that we can absorb. In this verse, the royal road to hell is described. The demoniac want to make a show of religion and advancement in spiritual science, although they do not follow the principles. They are always arrogant or proud in possessing some type of education or so much wealth. They desire to be worshipped by others and demand respectability, although they do not command respect. Over trifles, small things, they become very angry and speak harshly, not gently. They do not know what should be done, what should not be done. They do everything whimsically according to their own desire, and they do not recognize authority. These demoniac qualities are taken on by them from the beginning of their bodies in the womb of their mothers, and as they grow they manifest all these inauspicious qualities. So when it says do not follow principles, means they are not cultivating the divine qualities. So it's very important that in our Sangha or in our community, we do not let each other become demons. It's very easy. It's very easy to get carried away. Have you witnessed these things in your experience? You're all, everybody is devotees here, so I can speak openly. Do you witness this in the community? Amongst devotees? How does that make you feel? Does that make you feel nice? You just wonder, right? It's like, it's so contradictory. Even when it happens, you feel, what's wrong? Is this what I came here for? To witness this? Is this what one should be doing? And all kinds of question marks and doubts arise in your mind. Is this really bhakti? Krishna says that is not bhakti. Prabhupada says that is not bhakti. If we are going down that route, what is that road described as? Royal road to hell. Now how many of us imagine you leave meat eating, you leave illicit sex, you leave intoxication, you leave gambling, all the nice things that are in this world, you leave all of that. I'm saying sarcastically, please. Yeah, understand that sarcasm. You leave all of that, you come to bhakti, and then you go to hell. Can't get worse than that, isn't it? Sarcastically speaking, can't get worse than that. So one has to be very watchful. One has to be very watchful, It's not for men only or women only or for only grown-ups. Everybody, I have seen it amongst so many people, is just bewildering. Starting with myself, of course. So many is bewildering. Sometimes you see children of devotees, they start developing these kind of characteristics because they're somebody's child. And then you just think, what's going to happen? Because they're XYZ leader's child or something like that, and then they start developing these qualities. And you just think, who's watching over these kids? If at this stage they develop this kind of pride, arrogance, conceit, then what will happen in their life as they move forward? So, okay, that was a bit of a purport and lecture kind of a digression, but an important one. So, first 3 verses, divine qualities. Fourth verse, Krishna gives demoniac asuric bhav in sutra. Right? He gives in sutra. Then he says, what will happen if you follow the right path? He says, the transcendental qualities are conducive to liberation, whereas the demonic qualities make bondage. Do not worry, O son of Pandu, for you are born with the divine qualities. Because Arjuna is worried. Pride, arrogance, conceit, harshness. Krishna is saying, don't be harsh. In your explanation, you expect me to kill people. Right? So, Krishna, I'm not really sure whether, what kind of quality am I in? Am I divine, demoniac? He's feeling a little shy. But Krishna assures him that, Arjuna, you are born in divine qualities. Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, all of us are born with some inherent internal qualities, like it says even from the womb.
Yes.
We possess. Krishna consciousness over a period of time helps us to eradicate those bad qualities.
Yes.
But what happens is that inherent nature sometimes it manifests now and then, and it takes.
It's good if it's only now and then. Please continue.
Okay. It manifests many times. It manifests. So sometimes, not sometimes, many times it manifests. Especially when we work in a corporate environment, we tend to give in so-called in Hindi terms we give goli. Goli, no?
Sangat sanjayate kama. I'm just giving Sanskrit equivalent of what you just described.
So in such circumstances, how do we just ignore it and just move forward, or
No, you can't. You have to, at some point in time in your life, say, it can be at any point in your life, depending upon your one situation, you have to say, I have to get out of this asat sangha. This cannot go on. Because the people we surround ourselves with will affect our consciousness.
But already, Prabhuji, I'm not talking about myself. See, we had such a big, before Casey, our friend circle was like this. Then now it has come like this. Only devotee circle. There is nobody called friend. In fact,
what is important? Quantity or quality?
No, of course, quality is definitely important.
In fact, it has become like this in quality and quantity. So
Your turn will come. Let him finish.
So what happens? If you ask friends, who are your friends? In fact, you have to really think, who is really my friend?
Krishna.
Of course.
Suhit Sarva Bhutana. At least one is there.
Yeah. So it comes. But what happens? We definitely have to associate with people in various forums. Right? So in such circumstances, how do we actually go about dealing with such people? What should be our thought process? Should we follow purely going by the scripture? Should we, because my issue is, should we wear two hats, or we should only wear the hat which is prescribed and go notwithstanding whatever is going to be the consequences? So how do we...
depending, there in circumstances you can apply each of these formulas, but there is a sutra that is given, and typically devotees, you'll hear in many lectures they'll talk about this. They said, you take their company, but don't associate with them. What they're saying is, in the matter of preaching or in the matter of your day-to-day life, you interact with them, right? But keep yourself completely aloof from their mentality.
Can you give me some example, Guruji? Give us some example.
So you can, let's say, you interact on an as and needed basis, is another English sutra. When you're working, you have to maintain your interaction, you have to attend meeting, you focus on your work, you interact with them. When you're sitting for lunch, okay, they open their box, you open your box, right? You open your box, you're sitting around, you're having a social dialogue, let them eat their box, you eat your box. So you're close by, interacting, but you're not taking on their mentality. So that's one simple example. But this can be applied at every level depending upon how refined and how expert we are. Right? So if somebody is there, they're talking all the time about, I'm investing here, I'm investing this, I'm doing this, there's so many things. At the same time, you can hear all of that. Okay. Oh, very good. Very excellent. I'm very happy for you. Excellent. Just go on. But you say, I'm going to invest my time, money and energy in something else. So that's what you've got to do. The more we have experience, hopefully, the more we have experience, the more we read Bhagavad-gita, the more our faith becomes strong, our ability to manage, our ability to protect ourselves in the environments is higher. So a personality like Nitya-Nanda could go into a brothel, he could go into a liquor shop. He didn't go to a brothel, he went to a liquor shop, and he would extract people out from there to chant the holy name. So we have to estimate what is our caliber and accordingly act. But it's a tightrope walk. And I typically say, you do this circus for some time, and when you collected enough after the circus, then say goodbye to the circus and have a good life. Period. You determine whatever that is, but it's not necessary you have to participate in this circus for throughout your life. It is not necessary. There is another option, which
and I think you have shown by leading by example. So,
I don't know how long I will last, but let's see. I will last. But I've seen many people. They have exercised options, but I err on the side of safety before giving such advices, because everybody has to really look at their personal circumstances, what commitments they have, etc. Because as Krishna describes in the Karma Yoga section of Bhagavad-gita, premature renunciation is not going to be helpful. Mode of passion. Very nice. Well, thank you for sharing from our recent discussions. Okay, Prabhu? All right. So, Krishna in 5th verse has assured Arjuna, "Don't worry, Arjun. I've said don't be harsh, but you can fight. You are from divine nature." Why is his fighting all right? Because he's working out to Shastra under the order of the spiritual master, and in this case, the spiritual master, the Bhagwan himself, is giving him directions. Okay. So when you work under Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, you're all right. In the 6th verse, right. So it's interesting point, but I made it the other day. So in the 6th verse, "O son of Pritha, in this world there are two kinds of created beings. One is called divine and the other is called demoniac. I have already explained to you at length the divine qualities. Now hear from me of the demoniac qualities." Right? Now what will happen from verse number almost from 7 all the way till 20, Krishna will go threadbare in describing the Asurik Bhav, the demoniac nature of people. So let us chant the first demoniac nature. I'll request Mataji to please chant the Sanskrit of verse number 7 in Sanskrit.
Pravritim cha nivritim cha janana vidur asuraha na shausham na pichacharo na satyam teshu vidyate.
So those who are demoniac do not know what is to be done, pravritim, and what is not to be done, nivritim. Neither cleanliness nor proper behavior nor truth is found in them. Whimsical, they don't have any guidance. So straightforward. If they don't have any guidance, they don't know what to do. And Krishna will later state directly that actions performed without proper discrimination between right and wrong are symptomatic of the mode of passion. Where you don't have proper judgment. In ignorance, Sudhindran Prabhu, they do reverse. Completely reverse. So, mode of passion, a mode with which the demoniac are richly endowed. Choice of words. So, it is said even if a demon propounds a philosophy, its value is compared to the preaching of the vulture and the jackal. And we gave that analogy of the vulture and the jackal. One boy has died. The vulture comes and gives very high philosophy to the family members. Why are you worried about the body? The body is nothing. It's the Atma you should be focused on. So they were on the Shamshan Ghat area next to a river. The vulture comes. The jackal comes first for jackal. Jackal sees, oh, this body they're going to burn. It can be my food tonight. So he starts giving philosophy. Right? But his main purpose is gratification. Then after some time a vulture sees a dialogue is going on. He says, there's an opportunity. Let me jump. And vulture gives even higher philosophy. He says the same thing. Don't get carried away with this. What the jackal is saying. Listen to me. You all go home. But we don't want to become philosophers like that. Preachers like that. That we're looking that somehow or the other I want my own labh, my own puja, my own pratishtha. I want name, fame, glory, followers for myself. Then use of philosophy is then in the demoniac mentality. Demoniac mentality. That Prabhupada warns us. We have to be very careful of that demoniac mentality. Now, what are the other things that the demons do? 8th verse says. They say that this world is unreal. Do you come across people like this? I do come across in the walks of life. It's unreal. Nothing is real in this world. You know, when you start first, they don't know anything about philosophy. They have nothing to do with philosophy. All day they will be on their phones and computers and doing something else, playing video games. And then when you raise the topic philosophy, you see suddenly they're Everything will change. They'll wear the jacket again, the tie will be adjusted. Yes. They will, again in their memory, they will recall everything they would have heard from their birth from somebody somewhere. Right? They'll make a big khichdi out of that. Right? And if they happen to be at a senior position than in your workplace, you got it. Because they'll pour that khichdi one after the other in front of you, one after the other in front of, and you just got to swallow it. You just got to swallow it.
With a smile.
With a smile, you just got to eat it. And what will they say? The world is unreal. There is no foundation. No God in control. I don't see any God. There is no God in control. They say it is produced of sex desire and has no cause other than lust. Then, following such conclusions, what kind of activities do they carry out? If people are thinking like this, there is no God, this world is unreal, what do you think they will do? If they have no idea of God exists, and they say this world is unreal, there is no God, there is no foundation of this world, means there is no principles to be followed, it's all about sex indulgence in this. What do you think they will do? That is described. The next verse says, following such conclusion, the demoniac who are lost to themselves and who have no intelligence engage in unbeneficial, horrible work meant to destroy the world. They even come up with their own philosophies, right? So you will see many times there are so many cults around the world, so many new religious movements, and there were plenty. Their main activity is indulgence in intoxication, some form of drugs, hard, soft, whatever. Their main indulgence is in illicit sex, right? And they create this whole philosophy around it. And they get lots of followers. They convince them. But what is really happening? They're attracting people who are influenced by those lower modes. They start worshipping such people. Because the next chapter says, you will worship according to your faith and mode. And then they become large organizations. But through the eyes of Bhagavad-gita, just by observing their behavior, observing their character, observing their activity, you can see whether they're demoniac or they're at least in the divine path or not. And they carry out very bad activity. I mean, there is so many have come. Even now I can guarantee there are thousands in existence who are following this path of demoniac. And their mantra is, there is no God, but I am worship. They will not use the word God, but they put themselves in the center as God. That's their modus operandi. What do? Taking shelter of insatiable lust, verse number 10, and absorbed in the conceit of pride and false prestige, the demoniac, thus illusioned, are always sworn to unclean work, attracted by the impermanent. Really bad kind of activities they will do. And it's not uncommon for such cults to indulge in drug peddling, human trafficking, and all kinds of wrong activities. Verse number 11 and 12. They believe that to gratify the senses is the prime necessity of human civilization. Thus, until the end of life, their anxiety is immeasurable. Bound by a network of hundreds and thousands of desires and absorbed in lust and anger, they secure money by illegal means for sense gratification. Sounds familiar, right? Sounds very familiar. We are at the section where we are now talking about demoniac qualities. Do not confuse these two because it can cause a lot of trouble. While reading Bhagavad-gita, you fall asleep, you get up. What divine quality. Believe, gratify the senses, the prime necessity of human civilization. Until the end of life, they're exactly. Oh, exactly. So be careful. So never fall asleep. So 13 to 15. This is very interesting section of verses. Very often quoted by Maharaj and Prabhupada. Very beautifully done. And I find it very interesting because it will really switch on a lot of light bulbs. Even if tube light is there, by the end of the 3 verses, the tube light will also rise. So, demoniac person thinks. Normally we'll think, I am thinking, but the demoniac person thinks, so much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more according to my mutual investment fund scheme. So much is mine now, and it will increase in the future. More and more. We are still in the demoniac section. He is my enemy, and I have killed him. And my other enemies will also be killed. I am the Lord of everything. I am the enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful and happy. You see, I will just decrypt some of these words. When it says enemies, it's not necessarily battlefield. Sometimes we have enemies in office place, and if he resigns or he's been dismissed, we feel yes. You know, I knew this was going to happen because he took panga with me, right?
But if
it's only a matter of time.
If he has been dismissed not because of me, but because of his own karma, and if I get happy, become happy, is it wrong to me?
Yeah, because
that's how it's happening. You know, one employee now just on 16th.
It's not what happens to him. It's typically not the circumstance. It's our reaction to the circumstances which help us understand whether we are influenced by divine nature, demoniac nature, or transcendental nature. Because in the previous chapters, in earlier on chapters of Bhagavad-gita, Pandita Samadarshana, he looks equally between an enemy and a friend. But our reaction is, good. It's a reflection of our demoniac qualities. I have killed him. Doesn't necessarily mean you've taken a sword and killed him. You basically caused him harm. Means demoniac nature. And my other enemies will also be killed. If you have a list of people you never want to see in your life, you know, I really wish this person was not part of our congregation. You're surprised? You're surprised?
In Kanaiyyadesh, my arena is very limited. It's not there.
You'll be surprised how even amongst community in religious communities, these feelings exist in this form. I really wish this person. I don't know how many more years Krishna will test my tolerance. I'm fed up.
What a difference.
It is there. It is there. We bring a lot of baggage to the process of bhakti, and we have to be very careful. This is not written for somebody outside. It is written for us. The earlier we start seeing it, the better for us. I am the Lord of everything doesn't mean Lord definition, not that I have a simhasan, I am wearing a crown and I am wearing these kingly clothes. No. This idea, I am in control. I know where my life is going. This is my family, this is my wife, this is my children. I have it all sorted out. Is the idea I am the Lord of everything that I survey. I am the enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful and happy. All thoughts arising from demoniac nature. I am the richest man surrounded by aristocratic relatives. This is our desire, this is what we all are aspiring for. To have a nice arrangement. My relatives are, everybody's well-to-do. If somebody asks you, where would you want your boy or girl to be married? Good family? That's our desires. These are our desires. There is none so powerful and happy as I am. I shall perform sacrifice, I shall give some charity, and thus I shall rejoice. In this way, such persons are deluded by ignorance. Okay? Now, what also happens is, when you're carrying out these activities, as Krishna explained in verse number 11, 12 also, 16 says, thus perplexed by various anxieties and bound by a network of illusion, they become too strongly attached to sense enjoyment and fall down into hell. It's like quicksand, once you step into it, you just get sucked. You just get completely sucked. And it is common, the more you increase your sense enjoyment, you think it's alright. I'm practicing bhakti, I should be alright. But before you know, you're same gone. That's how it is. It's like quicksand. Very quickly it happens. It completely absorbs you and takes you away. So we have to protect ourselves from these networks of desires. And I was sharing the other day, if you want to know your networks of desire, every morning when you pick up your bead bag, it will appear. All of them. It's like, the whole room will be filled, dancing with our desires. And it's not good. It's not good. A strict process of Bhagavad-gita says you should not have any desires of self indulgences. Yes, Mataji?
Probably in our lives there could be some people who will be kind of giving some annoyance to us.
Annoyance, yes.
So in that case, how do we deal with that?
No.
So Krishna says in Bhagavad-gita that a devotee thinks that this annoyance is coming to me because of my own prarabdha karma. It is my reactions which are coming in the form of this person getting upset with me, irritating me, etc. And I have two choices. Just tolerate it. Because the moment I react to it and I take some action, I will be bound by another reaction. So, through the eyes of Bhagavad-gita, this is how it is said, we understand that this is coming because of my own past misdeeds. Better to just tolerate.
But, okay, in the process of tolerating it, definitely we will get disturbed. So what I feel, maybe we should strengthen our chanting.
Strengthen our chanting in every circumstance. We should try that. And yes, we do get irritated. It will disturb us. But that's what this process is. That tolerate more. When it gets more irritating, then tolerate a little bit more.
Can't we try to stop, Prabhu?
Huh?
Can't we try to stop?
Yeah, if you slap them, then somebody will slap you. What else?
Probably at one point.
Like somewhere somebody is really annoying, then we can say.
You can politely talk to them.
Politely
Say,
talk
Prabhu,
to them and
I know I deserve this. I know I deserve this, Prabhu. But can you be a little bit kind to me?
They're doing it again and again.
Can you at least mellow down a little bit? I read in Bhagavad-gita yesterday, I was in a class, I deserve it. But can you not just... Yes, you can try talking to them. One has to, this world is designed, it will happen. It will happen. We cannot create Vaikuntha here.
But just ignore. Just act as if you not had a...
Sure, do whatever is necessary to tolerate. If you can't, then speak to them nicely and offer some advice, which is also the right thing to do. Because amongst devotees, it's not nice. One offending the other, speaking harshly to other, and then other person feeling bad. What's the point? So our attempt, and also not only for preachers, also for organizers, administrators, devotees who are organizing and managing and helping, guiding the yatras, they have to make a lot of effort. We have to make a lot of effort that such situations don't arise amongst devotees. It can be very disturbing. If it happens from outside people, it's another thing. You can say, chalo, good riddance. Anyways, I'm not going to live my life with such people. I can tolerate a little bit more. But when it starts happening amongst devotees, it's very painful. So one should, it's not, together we should not let it perpetuate. individually tolerate, together try to. If you see somebody else is being hurt, is being misbehaved with, you talk to the devotee and say, Prabhu, I know you're not doing this to me, but I don't think this is proper. Guide it. And going back to your question, Mataji, tolerate and pray to Krishna, that you're kind. A devotee actually thinks you're very kind. I actually should have got 3 slaps. I only got half. I should have lost my hand. I only got cut in my finger. So that's the mood of a devotee. And this is scripturally, there is evidence. There are various evidence where it says that devotees say that this is how it is. That's how karma operates on devotees. So we had this presentation on misery and a devotee's attitude towards suffering, which Krishangi gave when she was here. If you remember, she gave this whole seminar on her thesis. It touched upon a lot of these topics and how through Bhagavatam one learns what should be the attitude of a devotee towards such incidents.
Purpose of 256 details.
Not like this.
Yes. The purpose of 256.
Many purports. I mean, everywhere it is saying the same thing. Everywhere it is saying the same thing. I'm just summarizing what Krishna says. So those are the ways to look at it. But having said that, it is tough. I'm not sitting here claiming that no. It is very tough. And each time it occurs, it's just like, how to handle this now.
And the best part is, when we can see that they are enjoying irritating us, is what is more irritating.
You're not talking about me, right?
Dealing with you will be different. But dealing with us.
In fact, Prabhuji, I just, if you can allow me, I just have a small example. When
As I said, I'm still going to finish the chapter. You can take as much time as possible.
Okay, let's
and tomorrow is Friday.
For all of us.
Please.
Actually, when I was in Bahrain, for 8 years I had a very tough boss, a lady boss, very, very tough.
Why did you bring the word lady in? You could have just said tough boss.
So,
That
Now
would
it
have
makes
been
sense. Now it makes sense.
So she used to always irritate me to an extent it was impossible. So one day it went to an extent. So I spoke to my colleague. I said, "See, she's not listening to me. She's irritating me so much. I feel like jumping out of the building." So it went to that level. So what he said, go to the Bakala, because she was fond of this Galaxy sweets. I bought a big box. I just left it. I said, just eat it and then we will talk. And from that day onwards, things started mellowing out. So
That was a quick solution.
So it was like, if in case we would relate it more to Krishna and philosophically, but in material sense, sometimes, and moreover, when we are philosophically, we are strong, like our Prabhuji mentioned in Shobhana Prabhuji mentioned the IQ, EQ and SQ. If our SQ, the spiritual quotient is high, the EQ and IQ will automatically manifest. So that's takeaway.
Yes.
It's trying to link.
Indeed. So yes, nice way you handle the situation. So we can give prasadam if it's amongst devotees. That's the way it is said. The nectar of instruction offers the 6 loving exchanges as to how to create those six loving exchanges. When they're done, then they create a nice environment for bhakti. Okay, shall we move on?
Prabhu,
Yes.
before moving that one, the demonic person thinks, so much wealth do I have today and I will gain more according to my skill. So much is mine now and it will increase in the future more and more. For in particular, even I don't have much wealth, but whatever we are having now, we are planning for 3 years. This really demonic.
Like share market. Like share
For
market.
example, bro, openly, we have a housing loan. It is going to end in 3 years if we have job. This kind of things is.
What is Bhagavad-gita saying? Why is it demonic? Because we are putting our reliance on something which is not Krishna. Our surrender, our faith, our shelter is not Him. It's wealth and bank balance.
If our consciousness is like, we are like thankful to Krishna for, because end of the day, if you see, there is also karma only. Based on the karma and what desire, Krishna is taking care of each and every entity.
If there is a desire and you get a karmic reaction and it fulfills, is it Krishna or is it super soul neutral sanction?
No, but
super soul neutral sanction.
Yeah, but under Krishna's direction only.
Not direct.
But He is the controller and.
But not in this way. Because if you apply that logic, then we'll go down the route which you were asking the other day, which I told you doesn't make sense. When you ask that question, that when something wrong happens, I feel very disturbed. Now this question is exactly the same question but in the reverse form. When desire and karmic reactions are happening, mostly it's super soul is neutral. Unless our heart is sold out to Krishna. If our heart is sold out to Krishna, then He participates in our life. Then He takes charge. Then also prarabdha karma will come, but very quickly He'll handle it. He'll handle it the way He likes. But at that time, at that stage, a devotee is not disturbed. When he has that shelter, he's not disturbed. Even if the sky would fall on his head, he would smile. So if we are getting disturbed, means we are not at that stage. So we should not fool ourselves into believing. Is it okay? Alright. Okay. So Bhagavad-gita said we have to follow Bhagavad-gita. I cannot change that now. Right?
Probably just one more clarification.
Yes.
A situation where a person is like bestowed with some, say, riches or some good knowledge, education, whatever.
Yes.
So that comes as a blessing. So if that person's consciousness is like, this is because of Krishna's blessing, it's not that I am doing, I am building a house. Krishna has blessed me with this, so let me make use of it. And I can use it for...
Sure.
In that
So it is not talking, it's not talking about, that consciousness is very different from what is being talked about here.
So
This much is, that person doesn't think it's mine. He thinks it's Krishna's. And he's not endeavoring, collect more and more and more.
So
I've received something. Krishna, you're very kind. Yours. Take it. Are we prepared? Is the question. Krishna, pick whatever you want. I'll be happy. The real test is when it's taken away. Even if you were to think hypothetically, if it's taken away, how I will be. If you look yourself in that hypothetical situation, happy and dancing, okay, no problem. If you think you see the future, then it means it's a problem for us. Clear? Okay. So, we are still on the demoniac section. I want to remind all of you. Right? Thus perplexed by various anxieties and bound by a network of illusion, they become too strongly attached to sense enjoyment, fall down into hell. Self-complacent and always impudent, deluded by wealth and false prestige, they sometimes proudly perform sacrifices in name only, without following any rules and regulations. Bewildered by false ego, strength, pride, lust and anger, the demons become envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in their own bodies and the bodies of others, and blaspheme against real religion. You see so many people who are very well-to-do, and they're just blaspheming most of the time. They're blaspheming religion. Because they become so proud because of the wealth that they have, they feel, who's God? There's no God. You're all fools. They speak like that. those who are envious and mischievous, who are lowest among men, Krishna says, I perpetually cast into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of life. Krishna is very strong here. He says, I, through the agency of Prakriti and Maya, lower and lower and lower and lower. So you may think, I think I'm at mode of goodness. It's all right if I do this behavior, but it is guaranteed you will go lower and lower and lower very soon. Right? Attaining repeated birth amongst the species of demoniac life, O son of Kunti, such persons can never approach me. Gradually they sink down to the most abominable type of existence. And a question arises that if Krishna is God and he wants good for everybody, why doesn't he just give his Ashirvad and take these people up? Natural question. If God is there, he should take care of these people. But Krishna says, at least they have to desire. At least they have to say, I want to improve. I don't want to be like this. Krishna says, then I'll make some arrangement. But if they say, I don't want you, Krishna says, what can I do? Then somebody says, Krishna, you're most merciful. Then Krishna says, but they don't want my mercy. Even if I bring it in a platter, you bring such people, you bring them Bhagavad-gita, you bring them prasadam, you invite them for programs, you explain philosophy to them, you want to do everything for them, but they don't want. Like, I'm busy. I have other engagements. I have this important thing, that important thing. What do you do? This you can see yourself happening. So, what is it? Now we are again coming to sutras. We are summarizing. Krishna is summarizing. He says, what is it that leads us down this path of hell? In verse number 22, he says, there are 3 gates leading to this hell: lust, anger, and greed. Every sane man should give these up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. Lust, anger, and greed. Lust is the core. Lust is the desire to enjoy, is the core. Now see this chart, I have explained this before. This is lust, the desire. If the desire does not get fulfilled, leads to anger. Take any example. You wanted a nice sari, you wanted a nice mobile phone, you wanted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things today. They did not come at that time. Your desire is not fulfilled and you become angry. Okay? So you say, what should be done? Best fulfill the desire. That's it. You fulfill desire, matter solved. Nobody is getting angry, nobody is getting hurt. There's famous dialogue in English. Nobody got angry, nobody got hurt. Right? But Krishna opens up our eyes and says, actually no, wrong. If you actually satisfy this lusty desire, it does not get satisfied. It's the example of putting butter in fire or ghee in fire. The small desire, which was first, I want a Nokia 610 small phone. The moment you get that in your hand, then the screen just starts becoming bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Right? It leads to, if the desire not fulfilled, anger. If it is fulfilled, it leads to greed, which is called lobha. That and then he's showing you the phone. That small one. And that lobe then next leads to moha. You start developing more and more illusion, moha. So you can see, take any example in your life as to how you got caught in working in Kuwait, how you got caught in your corporate cycle or whatever we are all engaged in, you take any example and you see this is what happened to us. That small desire which said, I will go and see Kuwait, or I will go and earn a little bit of money and come back and be with my mother and father and take care of them nicely. All of that started with that little.
True.
It has to be true because that's what Bhagavad-gita says. This is how it is. And then it becomes bigger. It leads to lobh, greed. Greed leads to moha. And that moha then becomes so strong that it leads to mad, which is madness. Sometimes we're running like a mad person to fulfill this greed. When the greed becomes so strong, moha, when our mind is gone, when our intelligence is lost, we all learned, we should have taken care of these things, but we become so mad out of greed. Our intelligence once the intelligence is lost, there is no stopping, there is no protection left for you. You will go to any extent. And I will specially tell you, this is true when you engage in any lusty activity. And it becomes very evident when you take most of these 4 activities: illicit sex, gambling, intoxication, and even meat eating to some degree. These are broad. If you are struggling in your mind to find an example, take these examples. It will become like this clear to you. You become mad. But if you want to really understand how it works in life, see one's own life. We can see our own life, how we become mad. And then, eventually, when you're mad after this, you become envious. Envious means everything is for me, I want it for myself. That's envy, not for Krishna. That's the definition of envy. So those are the 2 charts. Doesn't get fulfilled, I get angry. Get fulfilled, I thought it should be alright, but no, I'm sorry, it doesn't stop there. It becomes into greed, then it leads to loss of intelligence, moha, then it leads to madness, and then it leads to envy, which continues to keep us in this material world. So the man who has escaped these 3 gates to hell, O son of Kunti, performs acts conducive to self-realization and thus gradually attain the supreme destination. If we can somehow or the other avoid these 3 things, lust, anger and greed, if we can nip it in the bud, then we will find we have so much time to do something better with our lives. We will really, if you try this, if you try to disentangle yourself from this web of desires, if we all try to one by one cut all these ropes of desires which are binding us, I have to do this, I want this. If you start cutting it, you just see your life is actually becoming simpler and simpler, and instead of running here and there, you have so much more time to do things which are good for you. So self-realization, and gradually such a person attains the supreme. So in the next verse Krishna says, but if he who discards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme destination. Krishna has given the reverse. If you don't do it, if you continue to engage yourself in lust, anger and greed, get more entangled, then there is no scope. You will not even get happiness. And that's what we see. You see that people who are very, very busy and they're pursuing this and that, they may have everything in their lives. All the opulence, all the facilities, but one thing is missing. And that is happiness.
For example, Prabhuji, nowadays kids, they keep playing on tablet, mobile, whatever. The greed it just continues. I want to play this, I want to do this. You will not see the happiness what we had.
Yes.
We were more involved in playing,
simple things.
So we were always happy. Nowadays you give whatever to the kids, but that happiness is not there on the face.
Correct.
They are not satisfied.
And the reason is because current society is being run by, according to this chapter, people who are trying to increase lust and anger and greed. There's nobody who's doing a spiritual marketing. Everybody's pursuit is, I want to make more money. I have to get people hooked on to these things. So the natural, of course, then this is the route we will go. But now you think, I mean, for a moment it's a digression, but just think, what's the point? We create all this tamjam around ourselves, work so hard, do everything, and then we find our kids actually are succumbing to this kind of a environment. Now can you project this forward? I give you this idea to think, which is a very disturbing idea. If you don't want to think, don't think. Disturbing idea. Just think about their life 20 years from now. I can tell you shivers will go down your spine. If at this stage they actually don't have happiness, at least some of us can say that we were happy when we were children, right?
Oh yeah,
right? Good fun and this. But imagine if at this stage they don't have happiness, what are we setting them up for? Ever thought of that?
They get bored in every 10 minutes.
Bored is just a beginning.
Yeah, like
after that is
I can sit
frustration.
1 hour without doing anything and
After
not
that
bored,
is frustration.
Bored, yeah.
After frustration is indulgence in drugs. Okay? In New York State, there are 5 counties. There's a place called Staten Island. Most of the police force in New York State comes from Staten Island. So I have some family there. My wife has some family there. So most of the police force, these are all white American people, mostly Catholics, the police force of New York State, they come from Staten Island. The highest incident of drug-induced death amongst young people in whole of United States of America, according to one statistics, happens in this locality called Staten Island of New York, where all the police force of New York State, their families are living. So bored is just the beginning. Why? I asked this question, why is it happening? He said they're bored. The young people are bored. They want to just experiment with something. And they die. Next verse. One should therefore understand what is duty and what is not duty by regulation of scriptures. Knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so that he may gradually be elevated. Okay? See, we did 16th chapter, which talked about divine and demoniac. Divine, good qualities, few verses. Krishna then gave a sutra in 4th verse. After that he gave what are the pros and cons. Then he jumped into from 7th verse to 20th verse in describing the bad nature. Okay? And after that, now he brings back and says, if you really want to elevate yourself on this tree, what do you have to do? You have to follow scriptures. One should therefore understand what is duty, what is not duty. According to my mind, no. According to regulations of the scriptures. Knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so that he may gradually be elevated. And if people are not acting according to that, why are they not acting is again described in the next chapter, because of their influence of the modes and the divisions of it. Okay? So that takes care of the 16th chapter, and that summarized. One should use his human life properly to faithfully follow Shastra. One message, follow Shastra. Second message, avoid lust, anger and greed, and to at least gradually elevate himself towards Krishna consciousness. Okay? Srila Prabhupada's purport carries to a conclusion concepts that Krishna has been developing in the past several chapters. And I would request Anuttam Gopal Prabhu to read that section which starts from human society. In human society, aversion, yes.
In human society, aversion to the principles of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of all fall downs. That is the greatest offense of human life. Therefore, Maya, the material energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is always giving us trouble in the shape of the threefold miseries. This material energy is constituted of the three modes of material nature. One has to raise himself at least to the mode of goodness before the path to understanding the Supreme Lord can be opened. Without raising oneself to the standard of the mode of goodness, one remains in ignorance and passion, which are the cause of demoniac life. Those in the modes of passion and ignorance deride the scriptures, deride the holy man, and deride the proper understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They disobey the instructions of the spiritual master, and they do not care for the regulations of the scriptures. In spite of hearing the glories of devotional service, they are not attracted. Thus they manufacture their own way of elevation. These are some of the defects of human society which lead to the demoniac stages of life. If, however, one is able to be guided by a proper and bona fide spiritual master who can lead one to the path of elevation to the higher stage, then one's life becomes successful.
Okay. So that's the wonderful purport from Srila Prabhupada. So we're continuing our revision now. We've revised 17th chapter, we've revised 16th chapter. We mostly spent time on 16th. And I'm trying to establish how are we moving back. So the 16th and 17th focused on the divine and demoniac and where they land, what kind of activities they perform, on various things. All the way from their happiness in different modes to their motivations of work, so on and so forth. So many things we covered, right? This whole thing was in perspective of the allegory of the inverted banyan tree. So, in the 14th chapter, we are going to do 15th now. In the 14th chapter, which is called Modes of Material Nature, Krishna has given a framework in detail of these three gunas. Okay? In the 15th chapter, Krishna helps understand how to see the world overall. Overall, how to see the world in this framework of the three gunas. How is this world working? And then in 16th and 17th, then he goes into individual, their activities, their nature, their psychology and so on and so forth with respect to the influence of the gunas. And then in the 18th chapter, he takes us back all the way to pure bhakti, of how to rise up. Right? So now in the 15th chapter, this beautiful story of the tree will come. Krishna will describe the tree. He'll describe how life is in this tree. But in the Purushottam Yoga chapter, he also will spend some energy in describing life outside of this tree. Somewhere else, as a motivation. Okay? So we'll do this revision now. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, first verse, 15th chapter, it is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree and has its roots upwards and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. So what does it mean when you say knows this tree? Now, what is your... Knows this tree means you understand chapter 15, you understand chapter 16, you understand chapter 17, you understand chapter 18. Because when you go through these chapters of Jnana Yoga, the tree, then the leaf, and the person who's hanging around on that leaf and all his nature is becoming clear to you. So the Vedic knowledge, that's why Bhagavad-gita is called the essence of Vedic knowledge. In these chapters, all of us can at least get to know about the Vedas as per this definition. Because we understand how this tree is operating. The next. So in this, Prabhupada writes in his purport, in the previous chapters, it has been explained that there are many processes by which to get out of the material entanglement. Which processes have we read in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita? Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, right? All these. Dhyana Yoga and Ashtanga Yoga are similar, right? These have been described. And up to the 13th chapter, we have seen that devotional service to the Supreme Lord is the best way. Because from after describing various kinds of yogas till chapter 6, from 7th all the way till 12th, what was the focus of Krishna? The beginning, in between chapters are focused on bhakti, right? So devotional service to Supreme Lord is the best way, because even in the 13th chapter where he describes Kshetragya Yoga, in the end the purpose is to understand that how the Supreme Lord is the ultimate controller. So that Prabhupada writes is the best way. Now the basic principle of devotional service, what is the basic principle of devotional service? If we ask that question, somebody will say chant the holy name. Yes, it is. Somebody will, most of us will say honor prasadam. Honor prasadam is the most important principle. Then say chant, somebody will say dance, somebody will say read Bhagavad-gita. Bhagavad-gita, what does Bhagavad-gita say? Prabhupada says in Bhagavad-gita, the basic principle of devotional service is detachment from material activities and then attachment to the transcendental service of the Lord. They work simultaneously. Somehow this word detachment has disappeared from our dictionaries. Isn't it? In our dictionary of bhakti, everything exists. Prasadam, dancing, chanting, everything. But the word detachment? No.
But this is actually happening without our own knowledge of Prabhuji. When you are attached to Krishna and his related activities, naturally our attachment or inclination towards the so-called material thing has definitely come down.
If it is happening, very good. If it is happening, very good.
By and large, it's happening.
Very good.
At least when it's not happening, also we are aware. Oh, now I am in this situation, Krishna, like what to do? At least that consciousness is there.
Very good. If it's happening, but lot of times it's we have two brains.
Yeah.
Inside one brain, there are two brains.
Yeah.
One is jackal and the other is hide. So one brain, bhakti, bhakti, bhakti. The other brain, money, this, that, simultaneously. We have made a very nice curtain and it's all going on simultaneously. But if it is happening, very good. That's what Krishna expects. That's the process of bhakti. We do more activities in bhakti and naturally our attachment for material activity should go away. But if it is not going away, then we have to re-engineer ourselves. Okay, Mataji? Alright. So, now, I'll continue to read from Prabhupada's purport on the first verse. Now the basic principle of devotional service is detachment from material activities and attachment to the transcendental service of the Lord. The process of breaking attachment to the material world is discussed in the beginning of this chapter. Right? So in the beginning of this chapter, Krishna will describe the material world and he will also help us understand the process of breaking that attachment to this material world. Maya jale baddha hoy, acho meche kajol hoy. Beautiful bhajan.
Asanga has come.
No, this is a bhajan from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So next verse, the branches of this tree, think about the tree in your minds please. The branches of the tree extend downwards and upwards, nourished by the three modes of material nature. The twigs are the objects of the senses. This tree also has roots going down and these are bound to the fruitive actions of human society. So if you have properties in 10 places, if you have bank accounts in 15 places, if you have so many other things in 10,000 places, that is our tree. So it's not only at a macro level the tree, and we feel it's alright, I'm just one of them hanging out there. No, we all have created our trees. And how is this tree being fed? What is it being fed on? It's not fed on Shastra and Bhagavad-gita. What is it being fed on? Desire. Unlimited desires, which we are watering. How do we water the desires? By pursuing it. Every time you pursue a desire, you've given some more life to this tree. And this tree, you've seen this Jack and the Beanstalk? That fairy tale, Jack and the Beanstalk. He just puts little beans in the ground, and by next morning, like it's a huge tree, right? So this tree, the moment you, like I told you, right, the moment you give little water to the desire, the shoot is just gone up. That's how it works. So that's our tree. And it has roots, and it's like the banyan tree, roots are. And why is this analogy given? To give us an idea how difficult it will be to get out of this, because the roots are in, out, everywhere. So it's going to be very difficult. Right? So, right, the next verse. The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. This real form. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, and where its foundation is. This is referring to karma. That when we entangle, right now we are all entangled and we're just wondering, how did I get here? So the answer is given, karma. Then the question comes, like Mataji was asking the other day, where did that karma start from? Can't figure that one out. Since time immemorial. And it will create our own memorial. You know what memorials are, right?
Yes.
But with determination, where it begins or where its foundations are, you can't find out. So it's not like so simple. It's not like, okay, I have only one desire. If somehow the other I can cut this, finished, I am free. No, the problem is more severe than that. You can't find out where your desires, how many you have and where they're coming. So it's not as simple as that. Anybody here whose life is as simple as only one desire, you are really fortunate. But most often that's not the case, at least according to Bhagavad-gita. But with determination, one must cut down this strong tree with what? With the weapon of detachment. Now, unfortunately for us, Krishna said, this is the only weapon. So no more hanky-panky, no more, maybe after some time Krishna will become merciful and it will be taken care of. No. Our desires, we have to work on it and we have to detach ourselves. So Mataji, it brings us back to the same point. Consciously, we may be doing unconscious, but consciously also it says, with the weapon of detachment. In Bhagavatam and in many places, Krishna uses these two words, are very important. Jnana and Vairagya. Vairagya is detachment. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom everything began and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial. This should be our desire. Let's cut our attachments. Very difficult proposition, but have to do it. And then approach this world. So the axe with which we must chop at it is made of detachment and renunciation and is sharpened by knowledge and discrimination. The axe by which we can all cut our banyan trees, is detachment and renunciation. And how do you sharpen that axe every day? By knowledge. By reading Bhagavad-gita and Bhagavatam. And discrimination. Discrimination is, this activity is not good for me, I will not engage. Yes.
Probably in the matter of executing our duty, definitely desire factor will be there.
Sure. Please give example.
Like for example, bringing up children.
So what is the desire?
We desire that they are brought up with good morality, character, they should study well.
Is this any of these desires useful?
Yes.
You use the words morality, character, they should be good.
they should study well.
They should study well.
Yeah, these are the basic.
All are Shrama eva hi kevalam, according to Bhagavad-gita.
But Prabhuji, we have learned.
Unless amongst the list of desires is that they should go back home, back to Godhead.
For that,
And that
yeah.
they must surrender their life to Krishna in this lifetime.
But it's a process, Prabhuji.
It is a process, but in the list which you described, I am saying unless that is the goal,
Yes.
that is the goal, and that's what we're pursuing, then you will see the priorities will be very different.
No, but like, we just read that at least mode of goodness is required as a starting process.
That's right, yes, it's a starting process, but that's not the end.
Yeah, but you have to start somewhere, no, Prabhuji.
Best for devotees is to start direct. Keep the goal and work towards it. In the list which you described, if you had included, actually I want to get my kids back home, back to Godhead. I don't want anything else but pure Krishna Bhakti for them. Then that would have been the proper start.
No, but for that only, these are things.
Krishna Bhakti is independent of all of this.
Prabhuji, then why we are reading so many chapters on divisions of faith and modes of material?
Very good point. Krishna Bhakti can bring all of this.
That is what, then I swear when we're going through, I was just thinking, when we have this direct process, that's what I was trying to.
In our case, we have to do same. Both the thing. Take Krishna Bhakti direct process. Detach yourself from the wrong things. Because if you're really in an urgent mode, you really have to work hard. Time is limited.
Yes.
So you have to do both. So you can't say peacefully, I'm doing Krishna Bhakti, let this go on.
But practically, affinity towards Krishna does not come that big bang in the initial stage itself.
Actually, it comes in the initial stage. Madhurya Kandapani says, it comes like this in the initial stage and then we put water on it. See, most people, I don't know, I won't say most, but some people have this experience. The first time when they come, the first time when they say Krishna, the first time they hear Bhagavad-gita, they are like, like, where was I all this while? Right? And then, we hear the same thing, and I'm like, right. So, I'm sorry, I think I went a little bit digression. My point is, we have to keep our focus, right? All these desires, your question started from the point that desires will come, desires are there, and if these desires in the right direction, is this good or bad? Yes, they're good. If the desires are in the right direction, they're good. But unless that anchor of the goal is really prominent in our mind, we never lose sight of that. We know this is what I'm doing to get there. Then we are safe. But the moment the other substitute things like good education, the so-called morality of the world, I'm not saying don't educate. I'm not saying become immoral. But I'm saying when these things, our energies focus so much on all of this, we lose sometimes our attention and energy on the core, which was Krishna Bhakti.
Thank you. But the thing is, slight variation, what I wanted to know is,
Please.
like whatever you taught is for the self. But as parents or well-wishers, we want to give this to our children.
Yes.
Or our relatives. But then we cannot expect that they will have all of a sudden good affinity for Krishna and they will do Krishna. That's not possible.
Correct.
So, but then we have to prepare them because each one has got their own nature.
Yes.
But sometimes things are done, whatever we expect.
So you guide them in the right direction.
But if that does not happen, then what should be our?
Oh, that's a different question.
Yeah.
If that doesn't happen, well, several things we can. One is pray very sincerely to Krishna. Pray very sincerely. Second is find somebody who you think can help. sometimes we overestimate ourselves. I'm saying about myself. We overestimate. I can handle this. But an intelligent person will experiment little while and they will understand. The word discrimination came in this when I was reading, knowledge and discrimination. So sometimes you also have to discriminate this relative or this person I cannot help. I have to find somebody else who can help them.
Yesterday in our discussion, you were also mentioning we should know how to be indifferent.
Indifferent?
Certain people who are very much materialistic.
Indifferent in what context, please? Please remind me of the context, because otherwise it will be misunderstood.
If somebody is so much of tamoguna and he can't absorb anything what we say, then we can be indifferent to him. That it takes a lot of time for him to come out of that. So no need of preaching or no need.
This was in the context of people who are envious. That Bhagavad-gita should not be spoken to those who are envious.
Even while discussing on the different modes of material nature, this Tamoguna, Rajoguna and Sattva, that also I think we had a discussion when we were discussing.
Please go ahead with your question. So yes, indifferent and.
So that is what I want to know. What is that indifference? What should be our mentality? Indifferent is okay. I've told he or she is not willing to. Okay, cholo.
Is to understand our limitations, our own limitations. That I cannot help this person. Right? At the same time, you don't lose compassion.
That's what. So how? That's what I want.
By praying and looking for somebody else who can help.
We should not completely give up, but something else we have to try to.
We try to the extent. But if the person is completely closed, then you fold your hands and say, "What can I do?" Okay, Mataji? Alright. We are now at 9 o'clock. I'm only going to take 5 minutes. And then we will stop wherever we stop. We will not continue.
Off for me, so we can continue also. Today off. I have no duty.
Brilliant.
So you can continue.
Now that's amazing. That's what I was looking for. You and I are the only ones cheerful right now.
Today you were supposed to go to Mangav, but I am going to take you. I will drop you tomorrow morning to Mangav. And we will continue
Krishna,
with the night.
Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindhu. Now we can revise the whole Bhagavad-gita. Okay, we'll see how much patience, how much energy we have. Hare Krishna. How much energy we have, let's go ahead with that. Few minutes, okay. We will go through now. Those who are free from false prestige, illusion and false association, who understand the eternal and who are done with material lust, who are freed from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who, unbewildered, know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attain to that eternal kingdom. Right? Krishna's explained to us about the banyan tree which represents the material world. And then he talks about don't lose hope, this is not the only place, there is also the eternal kingdom. And he says, who can access the eternal kingdom in verse number 5? So, Krishna will now spend few verses in encouraging us. He encourages Arjuna and us that there is this spiritual world which is wonderful, and let's see how does this spiritual world look like, right? So in the 6th verse it says, that supreme abode of mine is not illumined by the sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never return to this material world. So one advantage is you don't have to pay any utility bills. Here, anyways, there is no electricity cuts, you don't worry, but if you're living in India, you have to worry about that. So it's not that that place is dark. You may be thinking, oh, there is no sun, there is no moon, there is no fire or electricity, and one who goes there never returns. Is it a black hole?
observe.
Isn't it? In the universe there's a black hole, you just go there and finish. So Krishna continues to describe it. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. Same theme that we are all struggling with our desires because of various senses, including the mind, and it's keeping us always very anxious, very entangled, always worried about this, that, this, that. So, this verse that we just read, 7th verse, indicates the mind's power to determine the living entity's future. And the next verse continues to that thirst, explaining how, determined by our thoughts, a soul attains his next body. In the 8th chapter, where what happens at the time of death, this theme was covered. Antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram yaha prayati sammat bhavam yati nasti atra samshaya. Followed by yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajati antakalevaram tam tam evati kauntya sada tad bhava bhavita. And Krishna gives the same theme where he says in the 8th verse, how do we move from one body to another? The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another, just as the air carries aromas. Right? When the air carries an aroma or a bad stench, does the air itself become polluted?
No.
No, right? So, example is given, the Shashwat living entity, the Jiva, does not get polluted. It is pure, but it entangles itself in this casing, in this body, which is composed of subtle body and gross body. And the verse continues, thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. So the theme is, depending upon our consciousness at the time of death, we will get the next body. So the kind of thoughts we develop at the time when we are living, we will have at the time of death. So if our mentality is that of a dog, then we will become a dog. If our mentality is that of a sleeping person, then we shall become a python. If our mentality is that of a person who really likes to indulge in eating meat, then you become a lion or a panther. This is a science, very simple science. Conception that you have at the time of death, you go. So, the living entity, thus taking 9th verse, another gross body obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. I'll explain this science to you just as a refresher. The anatomy of the soul is as follows. There is the spiritual spark. This spiritual spark, which we call the Jiva, is surrounded by a subtle body. The subtle body has senses. This is not a sense. This is not the sense that scriptures talk about. This is not the sense that the scripture talk about. This is not the sense that the scripture talks about. Under all of this, there is a sense of touch, there's a sense of sight, there's a sense of smell. These are subtle senses which you cannot see, which are covering each of our atmas. And they're centered around the mind. Now, depending upon the desires and the karma of the jiva, when you take the next body, let's say your desire is to eat a particular kind of food stuff. Let's say that happens to be hard meat. And you have the necessary karma. This subtle body shall start receiving these dressing. Prakriti in the womb of a appropriate mother will start dressing up this body with all the equipments that are needed for you to fulfill. So the ear that you get, the tongue that you get, the teeth, that all of this that you will get will be based upon the desire and the karma. This is a physical coating, right? This is a physical. I have this hand, a lion has a different hand. An ant has a different hand, but everybody has a hand or something to that effect if their desire and karma is to get a hand. But under that hand is that kinetic movement, that sense, subtle, of movement that exists with the jiva. Right? And it's all centered around the mind is the repository which stores all of these conceptions. It's the mind. Is it this is the mind? No. This is just an apparatus which is being used by the subtle mind. In human case, it happens to be like this, and the brain that medical science shows us. But in the case of an ant, it is different. In the case of a porcupine, it's different. So that is the science. That's how it works, right? So he enjoys a particular set of sense objects. So you get a particular sense and you engage in a particular kind of a sense object based upon the physical apparatus you've got. It's the aroma which is centered around the mind and creates this whole body. And then you go from one body to another body to another body to another body. Lifetime after lifetime. And Krishna says in the next verse, the foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. How will you see all of this now? Through the chapters that you read in front, ahead. You will all be able to see this now through the understanding that you have of the modes of nature. Different bodies, different desires to eat, different sense of happiness, different sense of determination, etc. Now on the other hand, so we talk about the foolish people, right? The people who do not understand this science. The endeavoring transcendentalists who are situated in self-realization can see all this clearly. So does it come automatically? No. We have to spend time and effort to understand this science. You have to read scriptures. It's not like that one day there is going to be you get up in the morning, there's going to be a bright spark and light and everything is illuminated. In all cases, you're hallucinating. That's all. Nothing else is happening on that day. But those whose minds are not developed and who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though may try to. And that is our state. Most of the time. We are trying very hard to figure out what's going wrong in my life. But we can't figure out if we keep using our mental faculties. But if you actually use the science of Bhagavad-gita, you understand how the modes are affecting us, how our mind is carrying us, how our desires are completely encasing us and putting us in a jail kind of a situation. Only then can we see. Otherwise, we keep trying. And even now we are trying, isn't it? We're struggling with many things we try. Now, it will take me 5 more minutes. I will keep saying this. But this time it is 5 more minutes. Hopefully, because I have my dear friend's approval today. The endeavoring transcendentalist, and I must tell you one thing, from everybody who's sitting around here, I can give you one word of compensation. In all possibility, I am the only one who has the earliest service to perform tomorrow morning. So right? So I have the earliest service to perform. So every minute that I stay here is going to affect me also. Not only all of you. So it's not like I give this class and then all of you will go to work and I will just go and sleep. That was other days, not this day. That was other days. Okay?
We have 6 Fridays and 1 working.
Yes, that's right. 1 working day. The endeavoring transcendentalist. Okay. The next one. Now Krishna moves and start describing how is that world. It's not a black hole, thankfully for us. It's not that black hole, no sun, no light. You go there and you don't return. Krishna says, the splendor of the sun which dissipates the darkness of the whole world comes from me. And the splendor of the moon and the splendor of the fire are also from me. Krishna now starts saying, everything that you see around here in this material world is coming from me. I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. And we stay on earth. It's Sankarshan which keeps us, our feet here, and we're not floating around. The power of Sankarshan, according to modern science, is called the force of gravity. While modern science describes it as gravitational force, but they're not able to give a clear answer of where is the source of that gravitational force, which, according to Vedic scriptures, lies in Sankarshan. I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. So not only am I the cause which gives us vitamin D, without which most of us will suffer, right? You will see now in this sequence of verses, Krishna will help us appreciate, even if we are the dullest of all, dull-headed, we don't want to believe in God, we have nothing to do with God. In the sequence of these verses, he will help us understand how dependent our life is on him. Can we live without sun and God? I mean, sun and moon? You can't, right? Somebody may say, I can live inside a house without sun and moon, I have my electricity. Fair argument, right? Fair argument. Then Krishna says, but you need to eat, right? That food that comes is coming from me, from my energy that I give to the moon. He says, I supply the juice of life to all vegetables, the prana. Then he says, you may say, I get my fruits and vegetables from the bakhala. Krishna, sorry, I don't depend upon you. Krishna says, what you eat, I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities, and I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming, to digest the four kinds of foodstuff. Not only our external sustenance, not only what we eat, even our existence. You see, if you have a problem with your fire of digestion, your life is over. It's just finished. They have fancy name for these diseases. Very, very fancy, long name which we cannot memorize. But it's as simple as that. When the fire of digestion goes, gradually, it's only time to say goodbye. I am leaving. I am seated. And then Krishna says, I am seating in everyone's heart. From me comes remembrance, knowledge and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of the Vedas and I am the knower of the Vedas. Very beautiful words, right? He says, and if you thought, I'm going to fast and I'm going to do what I like to do and I'm going to live my life like that. Krishna says, everything in your existence. Just the fact that I get up in the morning and I remember that my name is Tapan Misra and I'm not suffering from dementia is because Krishna is allowing me not to. Just imagine, and I'm taking time, I will not say sorry, it's a wonderful topic, whoever wants to get up and leave, more than welcome. But imagine your lives, and it happens to people, imagine your life. Everything is comfortable, right? We made all the arrangements. Imagine you get up in the morning and you forget. You just don't know who you are. Everything else is there, your car, your bank balance, your job, your everything. But you basically don't have any idea of who you are, what you did, who your wife is, who your children are. If you lost that, what will happen?
End of story.
End of story.
We don't know the end of the story.
You all remember that movie Matrix? That remembrance, just this simple remembrance is sustained by Krishna.
Can you say consciousness?
Huh?
Can you say this consciousness?
Consciousness is all symptoms. All symptoms, but this is just remembrance. Mata smritim jnanam apohanam cha. Not only knowledge, remembrance, even forgetfulness. Now, Prabhupada gives another example in the purport. He says, imagine if you remembered how in your previous life you were a hog, a pig. How will you sustain your life? Nightmares. Your life will be a nightmare. Now we get nightmares, I'm bitten by this or that. But your life will be a nightmare if that's the consciousness you live in. Or you find out, in one case, that you're the ones who actually killed somebody who's very dear to you. Like these Hollywood, Bollywood movies. It's happening all the time. You never know. But the one who's actually helping us take that forgetfulness is also Krishna. You can't sustain. In human body, if any other consciousness there, you can't live in the society. You will just collapse. If that forgetfulness were not created. Now, Krishna will now embark upon what is known as Tri-Shloki Bhagavad-gita. You've all heard about Chatur-Shloki Bhagavad-gita? The 15th chapter offers you Tri-Shloki Bhagavad-gita. And I will help you understand that the Tri-Shloki Bhagavad-gita, the first 3 verses will give you what is known as who are we and who is Krishna. What is our relationship? This is called Sambandha Jnana. Tri-Shloki Bhagavad-gita offers you first Sambandha Jnana. That's all it does. And after it finishes, then it will offer you Abhideya and Prayojana. Sambandha Jnana is who am I? What is my relationship with Krishna? That's offered in Tri-Shloki Bhagavad-gita. Abhideya is having known this, what should I do now? I've heard all this philosophy. I've been sitting in this class for 2 hours, 10 minutes now. What do I do? Where is prasadam? It will come. That's Abhideya. How should I act myself now? It's important, right? If I only gave you theoretical, philosophical framework and we all just walked out, we just wasted our time. What do I do next? I've been hearing Bhagavad Gita for 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, 15 years. What do I do next? That's Abhideya. And then is Prayojana. What will I get? Now, I'm going to only read the translations and you will see how this Abhideya, Sambandha, Abhideya and Prayojana will develop. Okay? First is Sambandha. Krishna says there are 2 classes of being. If anybody is worried, it is literally only 5 verses left with 5 minutes. I really want you to be cheerful and hear this. Be cheerful and hear this. There are 2 classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every living entity is fallible. And in the spiritual world, every living entity is called infallible. Sambandha Jnana. Which category do we fall in?
Infallible.
Okay, thank you. Besides these 2, there is the greatest living personality. Next verse, 17. Besides these 2, there is the greatest living personality, the Supreme Soul, the imperishable Lord Himself, who has entered the 3 worlds and is maintaining them. So we are outside of we described the banyan tree. Krishna talked about spiritual world. And now he is giving the jnana needed to get there. Right? Because he promised whoever knows this will not come back. He is giving the jnana. So first he says there is fallible and infallible living entities. We are in this material world, so we fall in which category? So we understand our position. Then he describes his position in the next verse 17, which I just read. Then in the 18th verse he says, because I am transcendental, beyond the fallible, the infallible, and because I am the greatest. You see, if you have any doubt whether Krishna is God or not, read these verses. He's not saying someone. He says, I am the greatest. I mean, where in the world would you find somebody speak like that, right? I am the greatest. I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that supreme person. Now, how much more direct can you get, How much more direct can you get than this? This is verse number 18. He says, Yasmat sharam atito aham aksharad apicho uttamaha ato asmi loke vedecha pratita purushottamaha. I am the supreme person. Right? In just 3 verses, Krishna has opened our eyes. We have fallen. There is the Supreme Lord, and who's the Supreme Lord? Him. I am the Supreme Lord. This is Sambandha. Next, whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now if you find out, yes, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, without doubting, is the knower of everything. He therefore, what does he do? He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharata. This is Abhideya. So not just armchair philosophy, I had a nice Bhagavad-gita class, see you next Friday if I'm free, or next to next Friday. No, I have now understood that Krishna is the Supreme Person. He said it very clearly. I am going to now perform devotional service for son of Bharata. That's the Abhideya process. And then in the end is the third part, which is Prayojana, is known as the fruit or the result. Verse number 20. This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures. Krishna is saying at the end of Purushottam Yoga chapter, he's saying, this is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures, O sinless one, and it is disclosed now by me. What he described in the 3 Shloki Bhagavad-gita is saying, this is the most secret path I have described. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavor will know perfection. Do you see how beautiful these last 5 verses are? 3 Shloki Bhagavad-gita, then Abhideya and Prayojana. Summary of Bhagavad-gita. Gives, this is what it is, this is what you do. Most secret. This is same as 9th chapter, most confidential knowledge. This is same as 18.65 and 6.6. What is it saying? Whoever, this is, what is he saying? He therefore engages himself in full devotional service unto me. How is it done? Man mana bhavat bhatto madhyaji mam namastu. That's how it is done. But devotional service is to be done. Is the most secret knowledge. And Prabhupada says, we read his words. In this chapter, the first 5 verses describe the process of freeing oneself from the weakness of heart. You look at Prabhupada's vocabulary, weakness of heart, if you're entangled in the banyan tree. You always think about that serial Vikram and Betal.
Yeah.
That Betal who was hanging down, always stuck to the tree. That's what we are. We go out a little bit and then back to that banyan tree. That's our nature. Okay, sorry, I took distraction. In this verse, Prabhupada explains 5 verses, the weakness of heart. The rest of the chapter from 6th verse through the end discusses Purushottam Yoga. And this is the chapter we read in the Adhik Purushottam Mass. If you see, this chapter by itself has completely everything is given in the translation. Material world, spiritual world is good. Who is God? Krishna is God. Who are we? Where we are stuck? How to get there? Perform devotional service, and you will be perfect. As stated above, to understand Purushottam Yoga, we have to be sinless. One has to be sinless to understand this. Thus, this chapter discusses breaking our material attachment and understanding Krishna as the source of Brahman, as the maintainer, the Paramatma, and as Bhagwan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Finally, knowing all this, one surrenders and becomes one with Him in desire and service. That is the conclusion of all Shastras and the Yoga of the Supreme Person. So, Bhagavad-gita as it is ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai. And if you still have some energy for some questions or comments, I'll gladly take them. Any questions, comments? Yes, Prabhu.
I just have one question.
Yes.
The creatures are born as animals and all that. Okay?
Who?
Creatures.
Creatures.
From a human form.
Got it.
Down
Yes.
to say, let us say, a whale. For
Yes,
example.
whale. Nice example.
When will the whale get an opportunity to come back to the human form?
So, the Karma Bhumi is considered to be the Manusha Yoni. It is the human form of life where you collect karmas. And then based upon what quality, how much nice karma you collected, you become a whale or a lion or something else. Right? So what you can do for this is, what happens is then in their life they just are unwinding their karmas one after the other and they rise up the evolution chain. So the stupid Darwin, idiot, rascal, Prabhupada's word, he took the evolution chain but he removed the soul from it. The same evolution happens. The karmas, they unwind. And the more sinful you are, the further you go down in the yoni. You come here. You come back here eventually after, long travel, you get back there. And you've been really beaten up very hard and you get back there. Then it's your choice again now. Restart. What do you want to do? It's not completely restart because you still have effect of karma. And then you move on from there.
Will those creatures have a shortcut like how we can choose the elevator?
If they're given prasadam, then they can come quickly to the human form of life. In some cases, as it happened in the case of Ramanujacharya, he was working and there was an argument, oh no, this is not possible, that is not possible in bhakti. And Ramanujacharya was crossing the bridge and some prasadam was falling from his hand and the fish which were eating, they were going to Vaikuntha in four-handed forms, and the disciples were saying, actually we don't need to ask more questions. Possible. It's possible. Krishna and the way he works is possible. Krishna also says in Bhagavatam, he appears in various yonis. So just like he's doing something for us, who knows, Krishna is doing something for somebody else also. That we don't know right now. Okay, that word, what is that word? Muslims, okay.
Yeah, Muslims, they offer sacrifice of animals. So, what is their intention? Are they doing it for...
Not only Muslims. Hindus also offer animals.
Yeah.
And mostly in today's age, their intention is only to eat. Nothing more than that. They'll book all the tam, jham and nice drama, but it's just the tongue. Lowest mode of ignorance, food, putrid, decomposed, there is no taste.
Someone told me that they do this because they can get the human life and gods. Yeah, they sacrifice animals.
No, that's misunderstanding.
They are basically swapping their positions.
That is done only in one sacrifice. In Vedic scripture, someplace it is mentioned, which is this what Prabhu is saying, where you mention, there's a mantra you chant when you're cutting an offering to Kali Mata, and you say, in this life I'm killing you, next life you kill me. Now you tell me who in the right mind who's chanting this mantra, and if they understand it, sometimes they don't understand the meaning of Sanskrit, they're cutting it. But if you know this meaning, will you cut it? But people still do it. Because tongue is uncontrolled. So that's how it is done. Okay, thank you so much to all the Vaishnavas for your association. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.